finally revealed the painful and complex truth behind the decades-long feud between two of England's greatest football heroes. Sir Bobby Charlton and his older brother Jack Charlton both stood triumphantly on the Wembley pitch in 1966, World Cup winners for England, yet behind their shared glory lay a family relationship fractured by personality clashes and bitter accusations that would span more than 40 years. The story of the Charlton brothers reached its final chapter on October 21, 2023, when Sir Bobby passed away at Macclesfield General Hospital following what seemed like a minor accident at his care home. At 86 years old and battling advanced dementia, Sir Bobby lost his balance while trying to stand from his chair at the Willows nursing home in Knutsford. He struck a windowsill and possibly a radiator, though care home staff initially found no visible injuries. Swelling later appeared on his back, revealing the seriousness of his condition. Hospital scans showed he had sustained fractured ribs, placing him at high risk for pneumonia. The coroner would later rule his death as accidental, caused by traumatic hemopneumothorax due to the fall, with dementia listed as a contributing factor to his unsteadiness. In his final months, the once nimble football legend who dazzled crowds with his skill and grace needed support with all aspects of daily life. His bed was kept low to the ground, surrounded by crash mats, with motion sensors monitoring his movements due to his restlessness. It was a heartbreaking end for a man whose name once inspired awe across the football world. But the tragedy of Sir Bobby's final years wasn't just his battle with dementia. It was that for much of his adult life, he had been estranged from his only brother Jack, with whom he had shared football's greatest triumph. The roots of their feud stretched back decades, with personality differences playing a significant role. Jack was outspoken and confident, while Bobby was reserved and introspective. In recordings later featured in the documentary Finding Jack Charlton, Jack spoke of feeling burdened by looking after his younger brother during their childhood in Ashington. Bobby, meanwhile, described Jack as uncompromising and recalled a childhood incident where Jack physically struck him during a disagreement over football. The brothers managed to maintain a professional relationship through their playing careers, but the real flashpoint came through a classic family dynamic that many will recognise. Tensions between Bobby's wife, Norma, whom he married in 1961, and the brothers' mother, Sissy Charlton, drove a wedge between the siblings. This strained relationship festered over years, but it wasn't until after Sissy's death in 1996 that the private family matter erupted into public view. Jack, who along with his wife Pat had cared for Sissy in her final years, publicly criticised Bobby for allegedly failing to visit their mother enough before she passed away. More damagingly, Jack suggested Bobby's wife Norma was the reason for this perceived neglect, reportedly characterising her as having airs and graces or being hoity-toity. These accusations cut deep. In his 2007 autobiography, Sir Bobby vehemently rejected Jack's claims, calling them absolutely disgraceful and nonsense. In a widely quoted passage, Bobby wrote, "My wife is a very strong character and does not suffer fools gladly. I am not suggesting my mother was a fool. There was a clash, and it just never went away, really." While acknowledging a personality clash between the two most important women in his life, he stood firmly by his wife against Jack's public criticism. The depth of their estrangement was starkly illustrated by Bobby's own words. He and Jack had never been further apart than we are now, adding, "I just don't want to know him." Reports suggest their feud lasted approximately 42 years, an astonishingly long period of alienation for two brothers who had shared football's highest achievement. For many football supporters, especially those who cherished the image of the brothers embracing on the Wembley pitch after England's World Cup victory, this family split was difficult to comprehend. The contrast between that joyful moment in 1966 and the decades of silence that followed seemed impossible to reconcile, but time has a way of softening even the hardest hearts. A pivotal and highly public moment of reconciliation finally came in December 2008 at the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Awards. Jack Charlton agreed to present his younger brother with the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. On stage, in front of a live television audience, Jack delivered a simple yet profoundly moving tribute. "Bobby Charlton is the greatest player I've ever seen, and he's my brother. The emotional weight of the moment was palpable. Bobby, visibly moved, bowed his head as the audience applauded. The two brothers then embraced, a hug that resonated deeply with a public long aware of their fractured relationship. It mirrored their iconic embrace on the Wembley pitch after England's World Cup victory in 1966, coming full circle after decades of estrangement. Further signs that the ice had thawed came in 2018 when the brothers were reportedly seen together at the funeral of their 1966 World Cup teammate Ray Wilson. Jack's son, John, later sought to downplay the narrative of a complete rift, stating that the brothers did speak on the phone about family matters in Jack's later years. Tragically, as the brothers found their way back to each other, both faced a common enemy. Jack Charlton passed away in July 2020 after his own battle with dementia and lymphoma. When Bobby's own dementia diagnosis was made public in November 2020, it came just months after his brother's death and only days after the passing of their 1966 teammate Nobby Stiles, who had also suffered from dementia. The cruel coincidence highlighted a disturbing pattern. Sir Bobby was the fifth member of England's iconic 1966 World Cup winning squad to be diagnosed with dementia or a related neurodegenerative illness. Nobby Stiles, Jack Charlton, Martin Peters, and Ray Wilson had all succumbed to the condition. This cluster of cases within one celebrated team raised serious questions about potential links to their playing careers. The central focus of concern has been the repetitive heading of footballs, particularly the older, heavier leather balls that were standard during Bobby and Jack's era, and which became significantly heavier when wet. Research has increasingly supported this link, with the University of Glasgow field study finding that former professional footballers were 3.5 times more likely to die of neurodegenerative diseases compared to the general population. Tommy Charlton, the younger brother of Bobby and Jack, noted that 4 of their uncles, all of whom had played football, were also afflicted by dementia. This family observation added to the growing sense that something within the game itself might be contributing to these conditions. Sir Bobby's diagnosis, given his unparalleled stature in the game, thrust this issue from a concern primarily voiced by affected families into a mainstream crisis demanding urgent attention. His wife, Lady Norma Charlton, courageously allowed his condition to be made public in the hope it might help others facing similar challenges, contributing to raising awareness and reducing the stigma often associated with dementia. The sadness of the Charlton brothers' story lies not just in their long estrangement, but in how both were ultimately struck down by the same cruel disease, possibly linked to the very sport that had made them legends. Their rivalry and differences, which had seemed so important for so many years, faded into insignificance against the shared fragility of their final years. Yet there is hope within this tragedy. Sir Bobby Charlton's legacy extends beyond his extraordinary achievements on the football pitch. Through the Sir Bobby Charlton Foundation, originally established after he witnessed the impact of landmines in Cambodia, his humanitarian work continues to help vulnerable people affected by conflict worldwide. Following his death, significant donations were made to both his foundation and the Alzheimer's Society, ensuring his compassionate spirit lives on. The global mourning at his passing reflected not just admiration for his footballing genius, but respect for his character, dignity, and humility. Despite his fame, Bobby Charlton remained a gentleman in the truest sense of the word, carrying his immense achievements with quiet grace. In the end, what remains most powerful about the Charlton brothers' story is that regardless of their differences and the years lost to their feud, the bond of brotherhood ultimately prevailed. Sir Bobby's reported words to Jack on the Wembley pitch in 1966, "Nobody can ever take this moment away from us," proved prophetic. Despite everything that followed, their shared history and the unbreakable connection forged in their early lives created a powerful undercurrent that eventually drew them back toward reconciliation and peace. Their story reminds us that even the greatest of heroes are human, with all the complexities, struggles, and reconciliations that entails. And perhaps that makes their achievements, both on and off the pitch, all the more remarkable.